The chains wrapped around Mirabelle Clark's body like a death sentence. Her wrists bled where the metal cut into dark skin. Her ankles were bound so tight she couldn't feel her feet anymore. The poison from the water she'd drunk 2 hours ago was shutting down her organs one by one. Her vision blurred. Her tongue went numb. 4 men dragged her across gravel toward the river. She heard the water rushing below. Cold, deep, final. On 3, one of them said. 1, 2. A gunshot cracked through the night. The man holding her shoulders dropped dead. Just like that. 1 second he was laughing, the next he was bleeding out on the ground. The second man spun around, a fist crushed his jaw before he could shout. Bone shattered. He went down screaming. The third man reached for his weapon. A knife appeared in his shoulder. He didn't even see it coming. The fourth man ran. Mirabelle's body hit the ground. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She stared up at the sky, waiting for death, and then a face appeared above her. Korean, sharp features, expensive suit covered in blood that wasn't his. Eyes like black glass, cold, calculating, lethal. He crouched beside her, pulled out bolt cutters, started snapping through the chains without a word. Before I continue, stop for just a moment. What this stranger does next will shatter everything you think you know. Drop where you're watching from in the comments, and let's keep going. The chains fell away, wrists, ankles, throat. Mirabelle gasped for air, her lungs burning. The man checked her pulse at her neck. His fingers were steady, professional, like he'd done this 100 times before. Who poisoned you? His voice was ice, pure lethal ice. Mirabelle tried to answer. Her throat was too dry. Her vision was fading fast. The man didn't wait. He scooped her up, carried her to a blacked-out sedan, laid her in the backseat. He pulled out his phone, spoke rapid Korean, then tossed it aside. He opened a medical kit, jabbed a syringe into her arm. Whatever it was, it burned through her veins like fire. Stay awake, he ordered. Not a request, a command. Mirabelle's eyes fluttered. Who are you? He leaned close, and for the first time she saw something flicker in those cold eyes. Not mercy, not kindness, something darker. The man who just decided whether you live or die, he said. And I'm not done deciding. He slammed the car door shut, slid into the driver's seat, and tore into the Seoul night with a woman who was supposed to be at the bottom of a river. If you've ever felt like the world turned against you overnight, you need to hear what happens next. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because Mirabelle's nightmare is just beginning. Mirabelle Clark signed the oath of secrecy with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. The agency's lawyer sat across from her in a windowless room, his face as blank as the walls. Black ink on white paper. Lifetime binding. Criminal penalties for breach. She read every word twice, looking for loopholes, escape routes, anything. There was nothing. Sign it and you're free to go, the lawyer said. His voice was flat. Dead. Mirabelle signed. She believed him. She actually believed that signing her name would buy her freedom, that walking out of that building meant she could finally breathe again. She was so stupid. 3 weeks later, her nursing supervisor called her into the office. Mirabelle knew something was wrong the second she saw her face. No eye contact. No warmth. We're letting you go, effective immediately. What? Why? No explanation necessary. It's at will employment. They handed her a cardboard box and escorted her out like a criminal. Mirabelle stood in the hospital parking lot holding everything she owned from that job, stunned and humiliated, while former coworkers stared through the windows. She went to the bank the next morning to withdraw rent money. The teller's screen froze. She typed, frowned, typed again. I'm sorry, your account has been frozen. What do you mean frozen? I can't access it. You'll need to call customer service. Mirabelle called. She was transferred 7 times. No one could explain why. No one could fix it. Her savings, her checking, everything, locked behind a wall she couldn't break through. Then the court summons started arriving. First 1, then 3, then 7 manila envelopes piling up on her kitchen counter like death sentences. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Crimes Mirabelle had never heard of, evidence she'd never seen, accusations that made no sense. She hired a lawyer with credit cards she couldn't afford. He fought every case, filed motions, demanded discovery. The cases dragged on for months. Mirabelle showed up to every hearing, hands folded, voice steady, telling the truth over and over to judges who didn't believe her. She won every single case. Not guilty. Dismissed. Case closed. But it didn't matter. She was broke. Blacklisted. No hospital would hire her. No bank would unlock her accounts. Her credit was destroyed. Her name was poison in every database that mattered. She sat alone in her apartment one night, surrounded by unpaid bills and eviction notices, and her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened it. Silence is survival. Mirabelle's blood turned to ice. She threw the phone across the room, but the message was already burned into her brain. They hadn't freed her. They'd just moved her to a different kind of cage. One with invisible bars she couldn't see until it was too late. Mirabelle woke up to her phone exploding with notifications. Instagram account disabled. Facebook permanently banned. Twitter suspended for violating terms of service. TikTok removed without warning. All within the same 30-minute window. All citing violations of community standards, with no appeal process, no human contact, no explanation. She clicked every button, filled out every form, wrote emails that bounced back undeliverable. She was just gone, erased like she'd never existed. Her LinkedIn profile vanished next. 200 connections, 5 years of professional history, recommendations from doctors she'd worked with, deleted overnight. She tried logging in. Invalid credentials. She tried resetting her password. Account not found. Mirabelle applied to 27 nursing positions that week. Every single one was auto-rejected within minutes. Her resume flagged. Her credentials questioned. Her references unreachable. She refreshed her email obsessively, watching rejection after rejection flood her inbox like a digital execution. They'd erased her. Completely. Systematically. Professionally. She packed a duffel bag at midnight, threw it in her car, and drove. No plan. No destination. Just away. She crossed state lines, didn't stop until sunrise, and checked into a roadside motel 6 hours from home. She paid cash, used a fake name, threw her SIM card in a gas station dumpster and bought a burner phone from a convenience store. For 2 days she felt safe. She ate vending machine snacks, kept the curtains closed, watched bad cable TV, and convinced herself she'd finally escaped. Then at 3 a.m., her door exploded off its hinges. 2 men in black tactical gear stormed in. No badges, no identification, no words, just gloved hands reaching for her throat. Mirabelle screamed, grabbed the bedside lamp, swung hard. It shattered against a helmet. She bolted for the bathroom, slammed the door, locked it. They kicked it once. The frame cracked. Twice. The lock gave. Mirabelle threw herself through the bathroom window. Glass tore her arms, her shoulders, her legs. She hit the pavement barefoot and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Just ran until her lungs burned and her vision blurred and she found a payphone 3 blocks away. Her hands shook so violently she could barely dial. The agency's emergency line rang once. Mirabelle. The voice was calm. Too calm. I'll go public, she screamed into the receiver. I'll tell everyone everything. The fraud, the robberies, the intelligence work. I'll burn your entire organization to the ground. Silence. Long and heavy. Then that same voice, colder now. Surgical. Your mother lives at 428 Maple Street. Your brother coaches Little League on Thursdays at Miller Park. The kids practice at 4:30. Choose carefully. The line went dead. Mirabelle stood there holding the phone, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. They knew everything. Every person she loved. Every place they'd be. Every moment they were vulnerable. She wasn't running from the agency anymore. She was trapped inside it. And there was no escape. Mirabelle stopped running. There was nowhere left to go. She returned to her apartment, hollow and defeated, and waited for whatever came next. The court cases continued. She lost every single one. The evidence was fabricated, the witnesses were paid, the judges were indifferent. Her lawyer stopped answering calls. Then he vanished completely. She showed up to court alone, representing herself with trembling hands and a voice nobody believed. The eviction notice arrived on a rainy Tuesday. She packed what little remained into 2 garbage bags and walked to the nearest shelter. She slept on a thin cot surrounded by strangers who asked no questions. She stared at water-stained ceilings and wondered how her life had collapsed so completely. Months passed. She volunteered at a local church, sorting donated clothes, serving meals to people as broken as she was. She kept her head down, made no friends, trusted no one, spoke only when necessary. The agency had destroyed her, but at least they'd stopped hunting her. Or so she thought. One evening, a woman from the church offered to let her stay at her apartment. Mirabelle accepted gratefully. She hadn't slept in a real bed in months. She showered, changed into borrowed pajamas, and walked to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water from the Brita filter on the counter. Drank it in 3 long gulps. Within minutes, the world tilted sideways. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattered on the tile. Her knees buckled. She tried to scream, but her throat wouldn't work. Her tongue went numb. Her vision blurred into doubles, then darkness. She heard boots in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate. The apartment door crashed open. Rough hands grabbed her arms, her legs. Cold metal wrapped around her wrists, chains, tight, cutting into skin. She felt them loop around her ankles, her throat. She tried to fight, but her body was a weight she couldn't control. They dragged her across the floor like garbage. She heard a car trunk pop open. Felt herself thrown inside. The slam of the lid echoed in her skull. Then nothing but darkness and the sound of her own failing heartbeat. Ben Kyle didn't do cafes. Too many windows, too many exits he couldn't control. But his contact insisted, neutral ground, public, safe. So Ben sat near the window with an espresso he wouldn't drink, watching the street like a predator tracking prey. 3 black SUVs circled the block. Once, twice. The third time, they slowed near the alley entrance. Ben's hand moved toward the Glock under his jacket. Rivals. Had to be. The Park clan testing his territory, or maybe the Choi syndicate making a move. Either way, they were sloppy. He dropped cash on the table and slipped out the side exit. Followed them on foot, staying in shadows, tracking their taillights east toward the industrial Riverside district. Abandoned warehouses. Broken streetlights. The kind of place where bodies disappeared and nobody asked questions. Ben expected a shootout, an ambush, a turf war. Instead, he saw 4 men dragging a woman toward the water. She wasn't fighting, wasn't screaming, just limp, head lolling, chains wrapped around her wrists, ankles, throat. Black woman, young. They were going to drown her. Ben moved without thinking. His first shot dropped the man holding her shoulders. Silent, clean. The suppressor swallowed the sound. The second man spun around. Ben's fist crushed his jaw before he could shout. Bone cracked. Teeth scattered. He collapsed. The third man reached for his weapon. Ben's knife was faster. It buried in his shoulder before the gun cleared leather. The man screamed, clutched the blade, dropped to his knees. The fourth man ran. Smart. Ben didn't chase. He walked to the woman sprawled on gravel, chains glinting under dim streetlights. He crouched, checked her pulse at her neck. Weak, Freddy, but alive. He pulled bolt cutters from his trunk, snapped through the chains one by one, wrists, ankles, throat. Each one hit the ground with a dull clang. He didn't know her, didn't ask who she was or why they wanted her dead. Didn't matter. She was alive, and someone had tried to change that. Ben lifted her into his arms, carried her to his sedan, laid her across the backseat. He grabbed a medical kit, jabbed an adrenaline shot into her thigh, and got behind the wheel. Then he drove into the Soul Night with a stranger who wasn't supposed to survive. Ben Kyle just made a promise that could cost him his empire, or save Mirabelle's life. Drop a like if you're hooked, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when a mafia boss goes to war with a shadow agency. Mirabelle woke to concrete walls and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city she didn't recognize. Seoul, maybe, or somewhere close. Her wrists were bandaged, clean, professional, tight. Her body ached everywhere, but she was breathing. She was alive. A man sat across the room in a leather chair. Mid-30s, Korean, expensive watch that probably cost more than her nursing degree. Eyes like black ice, cold, calculating, lethal. He didn't smile, didn't move, just watched her with the kind of stillness that came before violence. "You're awake," he said. Not a question, a statement. Mirabelle tried to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs, her arms, her throat. "Who are you?" "Ben Kyle." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You were about to drown." I stopped it. You don't owe me anything, but you need to tell me who wants you dead. Mirabelle's throat tightened. She didn't know this man. Didn't know if she could trust him. But she was out of options. Out of lies. Out of fight. So she told him everything. The agency. The spy work. Gathering intelligence for fraud and robbery operations. Her repentance. Quitting. The oath of secrecy. The systematic destruction. Her job. Her bank accounts. The court cases. The digital erasure. The threats against her family. The poisoning. The chains. The river. Ben listened without interruption. His face didn't change. Didn't react. Didn't judge. When she finished, silence filled the room like smoke. Then he pulled out his phone and made a single call in rapid Korean. Short. Clipped. Final. He hung up and turned back to her. You're a ghost, he said. They made you one. Erased you from every system, every database, every record that proves you existed. They wanted you gone, so they made you disappear. Mirabelle's chest tightened. Then what do I do? Ben's eyes went darker, colder, more dangerous. I'm about to make you invisible. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Ben's warehouse headquarters looked like a bunker crossed with a hacker's dream. Quad monitor setup glowing blue in the darkness. Server racks humming in the corner. No windows. One reinforced exit. He sat down, cracked his knuckles, and his fingers started flying across the keyboards. Mirabelle stood behind him, watching code scroll down the screens faster than she could read. He wasn't just typing. He was dismantling her entire existence. You're not just a Mafia boss, she said quietly. No. Ben didn't look away from the monitors. I'm not. He'd been trained by North Korean cyber warfare defectors before he fled south. They taught him how to crack military encryption, infiltrate government networks, erase people from existence. He used those skills to survive in Seoul's underworld. Now he was using them to save her. He accessed Interpol databases first. Her name appeared, Mirabelle Clark, flagged for fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. He highlighted it, ran a script, watched it vanish. Replaced with randomized data. Dead ends. 404 errors. Next came credit bureaus. Her financial history deleted, overwritten with algorithmic noise. Social security systems, her records expunged, her number reassigned to a ghost account that led nowhere. Mirabelle watched her face disappear from facial recognition databases. Her fingerprints scrubbed from criminal justice systems. Her birth certificate erased from state records. Every piece of evidence that she'd ever existed, gone. They'll know someone did this, Mirabelle whispered. They'll know, Ben said. But they won't know who. And they won't find you. He created a new identity from scratch. Birth certificate, Maya Lin, born in Taipei, naturalized citizen, 28 years old. Driver's license, social security number, credit history, clean, boring, unremarkable. Bank accounts with modest balances. Employment records as a substitute teacher. Generic photo pulled from a stock database that could be anyone. He printed documents from a machine in the corner. Passport, driver's license, credit card with a $5,000 limit. He slid them across the desk. Mirabelle Clark is dead, he said, finally looking at her. Maya Lin is alive. Taiwanese American. Teacher. Clean record. No flags. No agencies hunting her. No past. Mirabelle picked up the passport with shaking hands. Stared at the photo that wasn't her but could be. The name that felt foreign on her tongue. How long will this last? Forever, if you're smart. Ben's eyes were cold. Final. You're dead to them now. Don't make me regret bringing you back. Mirabelle nodded, clutching the documents like a lifeline. She wasn't Mirabelle Clark anymore. That woman had drowned in chains at the bottom of a river. Maya Lin was who walked out of this warehouse. And she would never look back. The agency sent a kill team at 2 a.m. 3 operatives. Professional. No faces. No names. Just silenced weapons, thermal scopes, and orders to eliminate everyone inside Ben's warehouse. They breached the side entrance with military precision. Silent. Coordinated. Deadly. Ben had been expecting them. The first operative stepped through the doorway and motion sensors triggered spotlights, blinding white light flooding the space like a flashbang. He raised his arm to shield his eyes. Ben's bullet found his chest before he could lower it. He dropped without a sound. The second operative spun toward the muzzle flash. Ben was already moving. He threw his knife across the warehouse, 20 feet, perfect rotation, buried in the man's throat. The operative clutched his neck, gurgling, and collapsed. The third operative froze, dropped his weapon, raised his hands. "Don't shoot," he said. "Don't shoot." Ben walked toward him slowly, Glock raised, eyes cold as winter. He pressed the barrel to the man's forehead, leaned close enough to smell his fear. "Tell your bosses Mirabelle Clark is dead," Ben said, voice like ice scraping concrete. "She drowned. You saw the body. You confirmed it. If they come again, if they send anyone else, I'll bury their entire network so deep they'll never find it." The operative nodded frantically, sweat dripping down his temples. "And tell them something else," Ben continued. "Tell them I know where their servers are. I know their safe houses. I know the names of every operator they've got in Seoul. If I see another shadow near this building, I'll erase them the same way they erased her. Understand?" "Yes. Yes, I understand." Ben lowered the gun, stepped back. "Get out." The operative ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Just bolted through the door and disappeared into the night. Ben stood there in the warehouse, surrounded by bodies and broken glass, and holstered his weapon. He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Clean up crew. 2 bodies. Usual location." He hung up, walked back to the loft where Mirabelle was sleeping, still sedated from the stress and exhaustion. He locked the door behind him and sat in the chair across from her bed. Message sent. The agency would get it. They'd cut their losses. Move on. Mirabelle Clark was dead, and chasing ghosts was bad business. Ben watched her breathe, watched her chest rise and fall, and allowed himself one moment of something that almost looked like relief. She was safe now, and she would stay that way. Ben booked Mirabelle a one-way flight to Busan under her new identity. Maya Lin, Taiwanese-American teacher, clean record, generic past. He handed her an envelope at the loft, thick, sealed, heavy. "Don't open it until you're on the plane," he said. Mirabelle held it like it might explode. "What is it?" "Everything you need to start over." He drove her to Incheon Airport at dawn. The city was still sleeping, streetlights fading as the sun crept over the horizon. They didn't talk much. Mirabelle stared out the window, watching Seoul pass by, a city that had almost killed her, a city she'd never see again. At the departure terminal, Ben parked in a loading zone, engine running. He handed her a small backpack. Clothes, toiletries, nothing traceable. "Ben, don't." He cut her off, eyes forward, jaw tight. "Don't make this harder than it is." Mirabelle swallowed the words she wanted to say. "Thank you" felt too small. "I owe you my life" felt too dramatic. She just nodded and opened the car door. She was halfway out when Ben spoke again. "Start small. Be boring. Don't be a hero." Mirabelle turned back. He was still looking straight ahead, hands on the wheel, face carved from stone. "I won't," she said quietly. "Good." She closed the door and walked toward the terminal. Didn't look back. Couldn't. If she did, she might not leave. Inside the airport, she found a quiet corner and opened the envelope. Cash, enough to live on for months. A phone with a single encrypted contact saved under emergency. And a handwritten note on plain white paper. "Start small. Be boring. Don't be a hero. You get one life now. Don't waste it. BK." Mirabelle stared at the note until the words blurred. She folded it carefully, tucked it in her pocket, and headed to her gate. She boarded the plane as Maya Lin. Found her window seat. Buckled in. As the plane taxied down the runway, she watched Seoul shrink below her, towers and highways and rivers that had almost been her grave. She didn't know if she'd ever see Ben Kyle again. Didn't know if she should. He'd saved her life, erased her past, given her a future. That was more than most people got from a stranger. The plane lifted into the sky, and Mirabelle, no, Maya, pressed her forehead against the glass. Ben had given her something the agency never could. Not money, not safety, freedom, and she wasn't going to waste it. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. This is where Mirabelle's nightmare ends, and her new life begins. If this story moved you, smash that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even the darkest chapters can have hopeful endings. 6 months later, Maya Lin stood in front of a classroom at Busan Community College, helping a teenage refugee from Myanmar sound out English vowels. The girl struggled with, through, and, though, frustrated tears welling in her eyes. It's okay, Maya said gently. English is weird. Even native speakers mess it up. The girl laughed. Maya smiled. It was a small moment. Insignificant, but it was hers. She worked as a teaching assistant 3 days a week. Tutored refugee kids in English on Thursdays. Volunteered at a women's shelter on weekends, helping women rebuild their lives the way someone had rebuilt hers. She lived in a small apartment with second-hand furniture, mismatched dishes, and plants lining the windowsill. Succulents, mostly because they were hard to kill. She made friends slowly, cautiously. A coworker who invited her to coffee. A neighbor who shared homemade kimchi. A woman at the shelter who told her, "You're safe here." Maya believed her. She laughed more now. Not loud or often, but real. She slept without chains, without nightmares, without waking up every hour convinced someone was coming for her. One evening, her encrypted phone buzzed. She'd almost forgotten she had it. Almost convinced herself she'd never hear from him again. The message was short. Simple. Still boring? Maya stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She typed back quickly, before she could overthink it. Boring is beautiful. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then one final message. Good. That was it. No explanation. No location. No promise of contact again. Maya didn't ask where he was or what he was doing. Some saviors didn't need spotlights. Some heroes walked away before anyone could call them that. She set the phone down and went to the kitchen. Cooked dinner, rice, vegetables, grilled mackerel. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just food that filled her stomach and reminded her she was alive. After dinner, she watered her plants one by one, checking for new growth, pruning dead leaves. She opened the balcony door and stepped outside. The harbor stretched below her, lights reflecting off the water, boats rocking gently in the evening tide. The sun was setting, orange and pink bleeding into purple. Beautiful and ordinary in hers. Maya Lin wasn't running anymore. Wasn't hiding. Wasn't drowning in chains at the bottom of a river. She was alive. She had a name that fit. A job that mattered. Friends who cared. A future that wasn't written by people who wanted her erased. And that, she realized as the last light faded from the sky, was the greatest revenge of all. Not destruction. Not violence. Not exposing the agency or burning them down. Just living. Freely. Fully. Fearlessly. She smiled and went back inside.